Sign it, Henry. It's just a formality, Ryan said into the microphone, smiling like he was doing me a favor. 200 guests watched from the glittering ballroom, champagne glasses in hand. My daughter Emily, still glowing from her wedding ceremony, looked at me with that innocent trust only a daughter has for her father. I stared at the document Ryan slid across the table. My name, my farm, my legacy on the line. Go ahead, Dad, Emily urged softly. Ryan says this will protect everything you've built. Ryan raised his glass. To family, trust, and the future. The crowd cheered. I didn't. I glanced at the fake notary standing beside him, clipboard ready, eyes darting nervously. Ryan's legal buddies surrounded us, nodding approvingly like they were watching another one of his smooth courtroom victories. What none of them knew was that I'd spent the past 4 months building a trap of my own. Before I signed, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket, "Why don't we hear what Ryan really thinks about family trust?" I hit play. His voice echoed through the speakers, recorded perfectly. $2 million. That old fool won't even read the fine print. By Monday, I'll own half the county. Gasps rippled through the room. Emily froze, her hand trembling as she turned toward him. Ryan's smile cracked. "Henry, that's not." "Save it," I said. "You picked the wrong old fool." For years, I'd been known around our small Iowa town as a quiet farmer. A simple man who kept his accounts in neat ledgers and his tractors in perfect order. What no one mentioned anymore was the 30 years I spent before that, unraveling financial fraud for Fortune 500 companies. I'd recognized Ryan's manipulation the moment he called me a simple man. Clara Jensen, the private investigator I'd hired, had sent me everything I needed 2 weeks ago. Complaints from 3 states, elderly clients swindled out of their savings, forged signatures, falsified trust documents. And tonight, his last performance was about to end in handcuffs. Detective Morgan, waiting by the back doors, stepped forward with 2 uniformed officers. "Ryan Carter," she announced, "you're under arrest for financial fraud, forgery, and elder abuse." The ballroom went silent except for the clinking of a dropped wine glass. Emily's face crumpled. "Ryan, tell me this isn't true." Ryan didn't answer. His confidence evaporated, leaving only the sweat shining under the chandelier as the officers cuffed him. Judge Sarah Collins, who'd officiated the ceremony, approached me quietly. "You planned this," she whispered. I nodded. "Had to. He's hurt too many people already." Ryan tried one last smirk as they led him away. "You think you've won, old man?" I looked him dead in the eye. "No, Ryan. I made sure everyone you con wins." A week later, when the full story hit the news, $15 million stolen from elderly victims across 3 states, Ryan's law firm collapsed overnight. His family's reputation shattered. His marriage ended before it began. Emily stayed with me on the farm for a while after the fallout. We rebuilt fences, fixed tractors, talked about how easily charm can hide rot. She still wore her wedding ring for a few days. Then one evening, she set it down on the kitchen table and said quietly, "You were right about him." I didn't say I told you so. I just handed her a cup of coffee and said, "Sometimes people learn what love isn't before they learn what it is." Now, when the cornfields sway in the summer wind, I think about that night, the moment a predator tried to steal my life's work in front of 200 witnesses. And I think about how peace doesn't always come from staying quiet. Sometimes, it comes from pressing play. Want to know how arrogance collapses when truth walks into the room? Stick around. I've seen it happen more than once, and I'm not done teaching that lesson yet. This trust is irrevocable and may not be modified or terminated without unanimous consent of all trustees. Ryan's voice was smooth, confident, too confident. He slid the papers toward me, his polished smile unwavering. "Henry, the documents are standard. Routine estate planning. Nothing complicated." 200 guests filled the ballroom, their laughter echoing under the chandeliers. The champagne had been poured, the music played, the cake stood untouched. And here I was, Emily's father, standing at the head table with a pen in my hand and a legal ambush staring back at me. Emily's eyes were bright, hopeful. "Dad, it's just a formality. Ryan says this will protect the farm." Protect. That word again. Ryan chuckled for the crowd. "Come on, Henry, don't make a federal case out of this. It's your daughter's wedding night. Let's get this signed and enjoy the party." Every move was choreographed. Social pressure, legal language, family sentiment. Ryan knew how to build a trap that didn't look like one. I'd seen men like him before. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Sign it, and I'll handle the rest. You won't have to worry about anything again. That was the moment I knew he was finished. Actually, I said, glancing toward the back of the room, I'd like Judge Sarah Collins to take a look at this before I sign. Ryan's smile froze. Henry, that's not necessary. Sarah's a guest tonight, not counsel. Even better, I said. A neutral eye. Sarah approached, elegant and calm, the way judges carry themselves even off the bench. What are we looking at? She asked, accepting the folder. Ryan straightened his tie. Simple family trust. Standard language. Sarah's eyes moved across the pages. Her expression darkened with each paragraph. The room fell silent, tension growing like static before a storm. Ryan, she said at last, her tone shifting to pure authority. Could you explain paragraph 12? Ryan hesitated. That's just trustee language. Basic control provisions. Basic, she repeated. This clause gives you unilateral control over all of Henry's assets, the right to sell, transfer, or encumber them without his consent. Ryan's throat bobbed. That's for efficiency. And paragraph 23 makes the trust irrevocable, Sarah continued, meaning once Henry signs, he loses all power to reverse it. Forever. A murmur swept through the crowd. Even the band stopped playing. Emily looked confused. Ryan? What does that mean? Ryan cleared his throat. It's being misinterpreted. Sarah, with respect. Who drafted this document? She interrupted. My firm, Carter & Fields. We specialize in estate law. Sarah turned to me. Henry, did you have independent legal counsel review this? I met her eyes. No. Ryan told me it wasn't necessary. Sarah nodded slowly. Then my professional advice, as your friend, is simple. Do not sign anything tonight. Ryan's face was starting to flush. We're overcomplicating a private matter. Funny, I said, because I thought privacy mattered to you, especially after what my investigator found. The room stilled again. Ryan blinked. You're what? My private investigator, I said. Clara Jensen, former FBI. For months on your trail. Emily turned toward me, horrified. Dad, what are you talking about? Ryan forced a laugh. This is absurd. She's very thorough, I said, pulling a spiral-bound file from my jacket. 89 pages. Color-coded. Names, bank records, bar complaints. 3 active lawsuits for elder financial abuse. The ballroom erupted in whispers. Ryan's hands twitched. Those are frivolous. Angry clients. 12 formal complaints to the Iowa Bar Association. I continued. Same pattern every time. Target older property owners. Convince them they need protection. Pressure them into irrevocable trusts. Then siphon their estates through management fees. Lies, Ryan hissed. Dorothy Henderson, 78, owned a grain elevator worth $1.2 million, I said, flipping to a tab. You convinced her to sign over control to you. 6 months later, she was bankrupt while you sold her assets for liquidity management. Sound familiar? Emily gasped. Ryan's voice broke. That's out of context. Want to hear your real context? I asked, pulling out a small recorder. Ryan's face drained of color. Don't you dare. I pressed play. Ryan's voice filled the ballroom. $2 million. That old fool won't read the fine print. These farm guys never do. The room exploded. Emily staggered back, covering her mouth. Ryan. He lunged for the recorder, but I stepped aside. Want to hear the part where you said Emily was easy to manipulate? That she'd believe anything if it sounds like protecting her dad? Emily's eyes filled with tears. No, you didn't. A commanding voice cut through the chaos. Mr. Carter, I think that's enough. Detective Morgan stepped forward, crisp in uniform, badge gleaming under the chandeliers. Ryan's jaw dropped. You brought the police? I smiled. Detective Morgan's been an old family friend for years. I invited her to the wedding. Morgan extended her hand. Mind if I see those documents? Sarah passed them over. Morgan's brow furrowed as she read. Forgery, false notarization, fraudulent legal structure. Looks like attempted fraud and elder exploitation. False notarization? I repeated. Where's your notary, Ryan? The woman who'd introduced herself as his assistant was gone. Vanished. Morgan nodded grimly. Convenient. Mr. Carter, you're under arrest for attempted financial exploitation and fraud. Ryan's composure shattered. You can't arrest me. This is my wedding. No, I said. It's my daughter's wedding. You just used it as your crime scene. As Morgan cuffed him, Ryan looked around wildly. Emily, tell them this is a mistake. Emily's voice trembled. You lied to me. You lied to everyone. Morgan began reading his rights. The guests recorded everything. Phones raised high like witnesses to a public execution. Ryan Carter, the charming attorney, the golden son-in-law, was being walked out of his own wedding in handcuffs. The silence afterward felt like a weight lifted from the air. Emily turned to me, her mascara streaked, her voice small. Dad, I didn't see it. None of us want to see monsters wearing tuxedos, I said softly. That's how they get close. Sarah approached quietly. Henry, you handled this perfectly. You protected her, and everyone else he would have targeted next. Emily sat down, the bouquet trembling in her lap. He told me families like ours needed protection, that you were getting too old to manage the finances. That's his playbook, I said. Convince the family the patriarch's slipping, then take control for their own good. It's not just fraud, it's grooming. She buried her face in her hands. I defended him every time you questioned him. I called you paranoid. You loved him, I said gently. That's not a crime. It's what he counted on. Sarah set a folder on the table. Emily, your father asked me to oversee this 3 months ago. Emily looked up, surprised. What is it? Your inheritance, I said. The real one. She opened the file, eyes scanning the first page. Irrevocable family trust. Established January 15th. Grantor, Henry Lawson. Trustee, First National Bank of Iowa. Sarah smiled. Perfectly executed. Legally binding. Protected under federal oversight. Ryan couldn't touch a dime. Emily blinked through her tears. You already protected the farm? The day after Ryan first mentioned it. So all his pressure, all those talks about taxes and probate. Completely unnecessary, I said. He was trying to steal what was already safe. Emily stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Dad, did you know he was a fraud from the beginning? I hesitated. I wanted to believe he was genuine. But the way he talked down to me, the rush to sign irreversible documents, that's what tipped me off. Sarah nodded. Classic sign of financial predators. Urgency, secrecy, and trust language designed to isolate the victim. Emily looked away, whispering, he married me for the farm. Maybe he did, I said. Or maybe greed took over after he saw the numbers. Either way, he made one fatal mistake. He underestimated who he was dealing with. She gave a sad little laugh. You let him think you were just a farmer. I let him think what he needed to, I said. It made catching him easier. Outside, the sound of police sirens faded into the distance. The guests began to leave, murmuring about what they'd witnessed. Emily stood, still in her gown, and looked toward the door. I want to go home, she said. To the farm. To what's real. I offered her my arm. Then let's go, sweetheart. She hesitated, then smiled faintly. Next time someone tries to con us, can we skip the 4-month sting operation and just call Detective Morgan? I laughed. Deal. But I doubt anyone will try again. Why not? Because by morning, I said, guiding her toward the exit, every lawyer in Iowa will know what happened to Ryan Carter. And no one makes the same mistake twice with a Lawson. As the ballroom doors closed behind us, I glanced back one last time, at the shattered illusions, the silent guests, the empty stage where deceit had been unmasked. Justice doesn't always come from a courtroom. Sometimes, it arrives in a tuxedo, on the very night it thought it had already won. Detective Morgan was waiting in the hotel lobby with 2 uniformed officers and a woman in a tailored Navy suit. Her posture radiated the kind of calm authority that didn't need introduction. Mr. Lawson, Morgan said, this is Assistant District Attorney Rebecca Martinez. She'd like a word with you about the charges. Martinez stepped forward, all focus and efficiency. Mr. Lawson, we currently have Ryan Carter in custody on preliminary counts of attempted fraud and elder exploitation. But to ensure this case holds up in court, we'll need your full cooperation, every detail of your investigation. I handed her the thick binder I'd prepared, 89 pages of meticulously documented evidence. Everything's here. My investigator, Clara Jensen, is ex-FBI. Every statement, every bank transfer, every forgery, verified and cross-referenced. Martinez flipped through the pages, her expression sharpening with each turn. This is remarkable. Transaction trails, client statements, notarization patterns, you mapped the entire scheme. She looked up. Mr. Lawson, you understand this evidence could dismantle Ryan Carter's whole operation? That's exactly the plan. She nodded, closing the folder with quiet respect. We're talking about multiple felonies: fraud, racketeering, conspiracy, elder abuse. Carter could be looking at 15 years minimum. Emily, still pale but steady beside me, spoke softly. What about the other families? The people he already hurt? Martinez's tone softened. We'll contact each of them tomorrow. With this level of proof, we can start the restitution process immediately. She paused, studying me. Mr. Lawson, one question. Why didn't you report him when you first uncovered his crimes? Because a man like Ryan thrives on doubt, I said. If I'd gone to the police too early, he'd have spun it as a misunderstanding. I needed evidence he couldn't explain away, him attempting the fraud, in public, with witnesses. Morgan grinned slightly. 200 witnesses, to be exact, including a retired judge and half the Des Moines legal community. Martinez's lips curved into a small smile. Unconventional, but brilliant. He can't claim confusion when he arrived with forged documents and a fake notary at his own wedding. What happens next? Emily asked quietly. Arraignment in the morning, Martinez replied. Given the scope and the flight risk, we'll request no bail. She gathered her notes. Mr. Lawson, would you testify if this goes to trial? Gladly. She turned to Emily. And Miss Lawson, would you testify about Ryan's manipulation and pressure tactics? Emily drew a breath and straightened her shoulders. If it helps protect other families, yes. Morgan's radio crackled. He listened, then looked up, his expression grimly satisfied. Ryan just requested his lawyer. He's claiming this was a setup and accusing us of misconduct. I chuckled. Of course he is. He can't stand being outplayed by a farmer. Martinez smiled thinly. Well, his lawyer will have to explain the recording where he calls you a perfect mark and outlines his $2 million payday. That's irrefutable intent. Morgan checked his watch. We'll need you downtown tomorrow, 9 a.m. for your official statement. I'll be there. As the officers departed, Martinez lingered. Mr. Lawson, she said quietly. Off the record, what you did tonight was extraordinary. Carter's been running this scam for years. You're the first target who saw him coming. I shook my head. I wasn't a victim, I said. I was a target. There's a difference. What's the difference? She asked. Victims get surprised, I said. Targets prepare. When they left, the ballroom was nearly empty. The flowers were wilting, the champagne glasses abandoned, the air still humming with the ghost of Ryan's public collapse. Emily turned to me. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. When you started digging into Ryan's background, were you scared of what you might find? I considered that. I was more afraid of what I might not find. If Ryan had been clean, I'd have destroyed your marriage for nothing. That was the real risk. But you kept investigating anyway? Emily, I said gently, I spent 30 years as a CPA untangling fraud. My instincts never failed me, and something about Ryan never added up. What tipped you off? The urgency, I said. Honest estate planning takes time. Consultation, review, revisions. Ryan wanted everything signed immediately. Pressure like that means manipulation, not management. She nodded slowly. I wanted so badly for you two to get along. I ignored the warning signs. You weren't supposed to see them. Ryan was a professional predator. But I had advantages he didn't. Experience, resources, and the patience to let him expose himself. Emily looked around the empty hall. If Ryan had been genuine, if he'd really just wanted to help, would you have considered his advice? I did consider it, I said. 3 different estate lawyers reviewed my trust before I finalized it in January. If Ryan had been legitimate, I'd have welcomed his perspective. But you never told him about the trust? No, I said. That was my test. An honest lawyer would ask about existing plans before proposing changes. Ryan didn't. He assumed I was naive, and that arrogance told me everything I needed to know. She was quiet for a moment, then smiled faintly. You weren't just protecting the farm, were you? You were protecting me. I nodded. If I'd confronted him too soon, you'd have had to choose between your husband and your father. That's not a choice I was willing to force on you. You let him destroy himself, she murmured. Sometimes that's the only way people can see who someone really is. Tears filled her eyes. I'm sorry I doubted you. I'm sorry I defended him. You don't owe me an apology, I said softly. You acted out of love. He acted out of greed. There's no comparison. She smiled through her tears. What happens now? Now, I said, looking around at the remnants of the wedding that wasn't. We go home. Tomorrow, we start building your real future, one without Ryan Carter. 3 weeks later, we sat on the farmhouse porch. The morning sun was warm, the fields stretching out like a promise. Emily walked up the steps, holding a manila folder. The annulment's final, she said, a hint of relief in her voice. Legally, my marriage never existed. And emotionally, I'm getting there. She handed me the folder. Dad, you need to see this. Ryan's facing 17 felony charges: fraud, racketeering, elder abuse, conspiracy. 17, I repeated quietly. How many victims? 12 confirmed, she said. But the FBI thinks there are more. Mrs. Henderson alone lost nearly $800,000. I shook my head. And Ryan explained it all away? Fake documents. Fabricated statements. Everything staged to look legitimate. She flipped another page. The worst part? The FBI says Ryan's firm deliberately targeted rural families, farmers, small business owners, retirees with money but no legal expertise. They called it asset optimization. It was basically theft in a suit. I felt my stomach tighten. How'd he find us? That charity auction last year, Emily said bitterly. He bid on the farm tour package I donated. Turns out he'd researched our assets months earlier. The realization landed like cold iron. Ryan hadn't fallen in love by chance. He'd selected his target with precision. Dad, the FBI froze all his accounts. They found offshore deposits, almost $2 million. And get this, the entire Carter family firm was in on it. His father, his brother, even the paralegals were part of the racket. I let out a low whistle. How many people? 7 attorneys. 3 fake notaries. 3 states. A full-blown criminal network disguised as a law practice. She closed the folder. They think it's been running for at least 5 years. Over 15 million stolen. We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Emily said, Detective Morgan called. Ryan's attorney is discussing a plea deal, full confession for a reduced sentence. 25 years instead of life. What do you think? I asked. I want him punished, she said quietly. But the prosecutor says a plea will guarantee convictions for the others and help victims recover their losses. I looked out at the horizon. Then that's justice. Sometimes protecting others matters more than revenge. Emily nodded slowly. Morgan said Ryan's cooperation could uncover similar schemes in other states. Then maybe his downfall will save families we'll never meet, I said. That's a legacy worth leaving. 6 months later, Emily and I walked the north field at sunset. The corn was tall and strong, whispering in the breeze. Dad, she said, stopping beside a row, I want to take a bigger role in the farm. Not just inheriting someday, learning everything now. I smiled. You've got an MBA in agricultural business, Emily. You're already more prepared than most farmers. But not as wise, she said, smiling faintly. After everything with Ryan, I want to understand how to protect what we've built. I want to learn the operations, finances, crops, legal work, and fraud prevention. Fraud prevention? Yes. Ryan, targeted us because he thought we were easy marks. I want to make sure no one ever sees this family that way again. That's a good start, I said. I'm also setting up a victim support fund, she added, for families who've been conned like we almost were. I looked at her, pride swelling in my chest. Your mother would be proud. She smiled softly. Do you think she'd have seen through Ryan sooner? She had good instincts, I said. But love blinds even the best of us. The important part is what you did afterward. She sighed. Sometimes I still feel foolish. You weren't foolish, Emily. You were trusting. And you learned. That's the difference. We walked in silence for a while, the golden light falling across the fields. Finally, she said, Dad, are you proud of how we handled everything? I'm proud of you, I said. Anyone can expose a fraud. It takes strength to rebuild after one. She smiled. So what's next? I grinned. I'm going to teach you everything I know about forensic accounting. She laughed, the sound clear and bright against the open sky. You're serious? Dead serious. Because the next con artist who comes after this family is going to find out they're dealing with 2 investigators instead of 1. She shook her head, laughing. Ryan Carter picked the wrong family. No, I said, smiling as we walked toward the farmhouse. He picked the right one. He just didn't realize we'd pick him right back. The sun dipped below the horizon, turning the fields gold. Sometimes, justice doesn't shout. It just smiles quietly, knowing it can't be fooled twice.